Hey guys, tonight we are going to do something a little different. We're not just going to talk about history, we're going to drop you right into the middle of it. Specifically, the Viking Age. Forget the epic horned helmets which, by the way, they didn't wear in the glorious cinematic battles for a moment. We're going to explore the quiet, everyday reality of Norse life, the part where you probably, let's be honest, not last a single day. It's a survival challenge where the greatest enemy isn't a berserker with an axe, but the world itself. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support truly means the world. And while you're at it, I'd love to see where you're all listening from tonight. Go ahead and drop your city and the current time in the comments below. It's always a quiet thrill to see how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. There's no jolt, no flash of light. It's more like waking from a dream you can't quite remember. One moment you're in your bed, the familiar weight of your blanket a gentle comfort. The next, you're standing on damp, uneven earth, and the first thing you notice isn't what you see, but what you smell. It hits you like a physical force, an invisible wall of odor so thick you can almost taste it. It's a complex, layered assault on your modern senses, and your brain struggles to categorize the information. The most dominant note is smoke, but it's not the clean, pleasant scent of a pine campfire. This is a heavy, greasy smoke, acrid and clinging. It stings your eyes, making them water instantly. It's the smell of 1,000 poorly ventilated fires, burning day and night inside the long, low buildings that huddle before you. It's the kind of smoke that works its way into wood, into wool, into wood, into wool, into hair, and never truly leaves. Beneath the smoke is something more organic, more primal. It's the smell of animals. Not the distant, pastoral scent of a farm carried on the breeze, but the close, intimate stench of livestock living alongside people. You can pick out the sharp tang of manure, the damp, oily smell of sheep's wool, and the general, musky warmth of large bodies packed together. It's a constant, foundational layer to the air you're now breathing. Then there's the human element. They smell of unwashed bodies, of stale sweat ingrained in coarse, woolen tunics. It's mixed with the unmistakable, slightly sour scent of damp earth and the subtle, rotting perfume of last season's thatch on the roofs. And somewhere in that olfactory chaos is the sharp, salty tang of the sea, mingling with the powerful aroma of fish being dried on wooden racks, their silver bodies twisting in the faint breeze. You instinctively want to raise a hand to cover your nose and mouth, but a primal sense of self-preservation stops you. That simple gesture would be an admission, a sign that you don't belong here, you are an alien, and your weakness is the very air itself. You finally force your watering eyes to take in the scene. This isn't a grand, fortified city from a television show. It's a small, almost pathetic-looking collection of perhaps half a dozen longhouses. They are dark, formidable structures made of heavy timber with sagging roofs made of turf, some of which have grass and wildflowers growing right out of them. There are no streets, only muddy, winding paths churned up by the passage of feet and hooves. The sky above is a blanket of soft grey, the light muted and flat, casting no sharp shadows. The sounds are just as foreign as the smells. You hear the lowing of a cow from inside one of the houses, the rhythmic thump 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 of someone working with wood or leather, and the murmur of voices. The language is guttural, flowing with a cadence you've never heard before. It's Old Norse, a tongue that feels as raw and untamed as the landscape around you. As you stand there, frozen, you realize a strange truth. The people here aren't bothered by any of this. A man walks past you, his beard braided, his face weathered by sun and wind. He doesn't even glance at the drying fish or the pile of refuse near a doorway. This is simply the smell of home. This is the scent of life. It's a fascinating and slightly horrifying thought. Historians have a good idea of what the Vikings ate and how they built their homes. But one thing they are still debating is the precise social geography of a village like this. Was the layout determined by family hierarchy, with the chieftain in the center, or was it a more organic arrangement, shaped by practicality in the contours of the land. Looking at the seemingly random placement of the longhouses, you suspect it's a mix of both. You learn a quick, hard lesson in these first few moments. Survival here isn't about fighting. It's about your senses recalibrated to a world that is louder, smellier, and infinitely more raw than anything you've ever known. You take another shallow breath, the smoke and stench filling your lungs. You haven't even found a place to sleep yet, but you're already exhausted. The real challenge, you sense, is about to begin. As the grey light begins to fade, a chill that has nothing to do with the temperature creeps over you. The activity in the village doesn't lessen, but it changes. The thumping work sounds are replaced by the lower, more intimate noises of a community preparing for the night. A woman with a kind but weary face, her hair tucked under a simple linen cap, emerges from the largest of the longhouses. She sees you standing alone, a solitary, bewildered figure, and gestures with her head for you to come inside. There's no hostility in the gesture, only a quiet, practical acknowledgement that one does not stay outside after dark. You duck your head to enter through the low, heavy wooden door, and the sensory world you were just getting accustomed to is instantly amplified tenfold. The air inside is thick enough to chew, the smoke from the central fire pit along. Shallow trench running down the middle of the hall has nowhere to go but up, where it sluggishly seeks a small, lone hole in the thatched roof. It hangs in a permanent, hazy cloud in the upper half of the room, stinging your eyes and catching in the back of your throat, causing you to suppress a cough. The only real light comes from this fire, its flames dancing and throwing long, monstrous shadows against the dark, soot-blackened timber walls. Your eyes slowly adjust to the gloom. The interior is one vast, cavernous space. Down the center is the hearth, and along both long walls are raised wooden platforms wide enough to sit or sleep on. People are gathered everywhere mending tools, talking in low voices, stirring a large cauldron that hangs over the fire, and at the far end of the longhouse, separated by a low partition, you see them, the animals, a couple of cows, a few sheep, and what looks like a goat are placidly chewing their cud, their warmth and smell adding to the thick, living atmosphere of the room. It's a bizarrely intimate scene, a family and their livestock sharing a single, smoky breath. This, you realize, is the famous Viking longhouse. It's not just a house, it's a barn, a workshop, and a social hall all rolled into one. And tonight it is your dormitory. The woman points you to a space on one of the earthen benches, which is covered with a thin layer of straw and a few rough-looking animal pelts. You sit down, feeling the damp chill of the earth seep through the wood. The warmth from the central fire is a teasing promise, only truly felt if you're standing right beside it. As night deepens, people begin to settle down. There's no ceremony to it. They simply find their spot on the platforms, pull a skin or a woolen blanket over themselves, and turn to the wall. You are shoulder to shoulder with strangers. You can hear the breathing of the person next to you, smell the lingering scent of dried fish on their clothes. There is no concept of personal space here, there is only the collective. You lie back, trying to find a comfortable position on the lumpy straw. It's impossible. Every time you shift, the straw crackles loudly. The smoke continues its relentless assault. You try breathing through your mouth, but the taste is just as bad. You learn that the Old Norse word for window, vindogastay, literally means wind die, and looking at the single smoke hole in the roof, you understand why. It's as a window and more a reluctant concession to the fact that breathing is a necessity. Sleep feels a million miles away. A child whimpers somewhere in the darkness and is quickly shushed. A man on the other side of the hearth lets out a rattling snore. The cows at the end of the hall shift their weight, their hooves making a soft thud on the dirt floor. It dawns on you why they're in here. In the brutal cold of a Scandinavian winter, the body heat from these animals could mean the difference between freezing and surviving. It's a brilliantly practical solution to a deadly problem, but that knowledge doesn't make the smell of manure any more pleasant. Historians and archaeologists have pieced together the general layout of these longhouses from post-holes and sagas, but they still debate the nuances of the social life within them. Did the chieftain and his family have a more private, partitioned-off section with better furs and more space? Almost certainly. But for the average free farmer or servant, how was this space negotiated night after night? Was there a set order, a silent hierarchy that dictated who slept where, or was it a nightly first come first served scramble for the best spot away from the drips in the roof and closest to the fire? Lying here, feeling acutely vulnerable and out of place, you suspect it's a complex dance of status and tradition that you have no hope of understanding. You close your eyes trying to block it all out, but you can't block out the sounds, the smells, or the feeling of the rough wool blanket scratching your chin. The darkness isn't peaceful, it's alive and breathing and shuffling all around you. For everyone else in this long, smoky room, this is safety. This is home. This is the comfortable community huddled together against the vast, dark wilderness outside. For you, it feels like being buried alive, and the night has only just begun. A rough shake on your shoulder pulls you from a shallow, smoke-filled doze. The longhouse is still dark, but a grey, pre-dawn light filters weakly through the smoke hole, illuminating a world still cloaked in shadows. The fire has been stoked back to life, and the woman who guided you in last night is now offering you a wooden bowl. It's warm to the touch. You take it, your stomach rumbling with a hunger that feels ancient and raw. You look inside expecting. You're not sure what you're expecting. Bacon on digs or a laughable fantasy. What you see is a thick, grey, lumpy substance. It's hofroggery ut or a type of oatmeal porridge, and it's the bedrock of the Norse diet. There's no sugar, no milk, no cinnamon. It's just oats, maybe some barley, boiled with water and a pinch of salt. That's it. You're handed a crude wooden spoon, and you take your first tentative bite. It's bland. It's gritty. But it's warm, and it fills a void in your stomach you had realized was so profound. You watch as others around you eat the same meal, some mixing in a dollop of soured milk or a few dried berries if they're lucky, but most consume it just as it is with a grim, practiced efficiency. This isn't a meal to be savored, it's fuel. As you eat your bland, soulless porridge, you look around at the other food sources. Hanging from the rafters, almost lost in the smoky gloom, are long strips of dried fish cod, mostly their bodies stiff and pale. There are braids of onions, and sacks that likely hold root vegetables like turnips and carrots, the workhorses of the northern soil. In a corner you see a large barrel that probably contains salted pork or mutton, preserved to last through the lean months. It's a diet built entirely on preservation and necessity. Freshness is a fleeting luxury of summer. For most of the year, the flavors are salt, smoke, and earth. You finish your porridge, the inside of the bowl scraped clean. There is no second helping. The pot is already being cleaned for the next communal meal. That's when the gnawing fear begins. It's not the immediate, sharp fear of an attack, but a low background hum of anxiety. This small bowl of gruel is all you get until evening. You're already thinking about the next meal, calculating the hours. This, you realize, was the constant state of mind for most people here. It was the result of relentless, back-breaking work, and it could all be taken away by a bad harvest, a sick animal, or a long, brutal winter. A fascinating little detail that archaeologists have discovered from studying Viking Age rubbish pits, or middens, is the sheer variety of what they were willing to eat when times got tough. They found the bones of seabirds, seals, and even whales, suggesting a diet that was incredibly opportunistic. But the most debated finding is the evidence of horse meat consumption. For many cultures in Europe at the time, eating horse was taboo, often associated with pagan rituals. It seems to have been more practical. Was it a sacred meal, eaten in honor of Odin, or was it just what you did when the cow died and the grain ran out? Historians are still hashing that one out, but for you, the thought is a stark reminder you eat what you must to survive. Your stomach, accustomed to 3 meals a day plus snacks, is already staging a quiet rebellion. The porridge feels like a stone in your gut, yet you are not satisfied. You watch a man casually grab a piece of dried cord from a hook, tear off a chunk with his teeth, and chew on it with the slow, methodical rhythm of a cow chewing its cud. It looks tough as leather. He offers you a piece. You accept, and the moment you put it in your mouth, your senses are overwhelmed by salt. It's so intensely salty that it makes your eyes water. The texture is fibrous and tough, and you have to work your jaw for a full minute before you can even think about swallowing. This is a snack. This is what tides you over. You see no fresh fruit, no crisp vegetables. The concept of a salad is so alien it might as well be from another planet. You learn that one of the greatest health risks, besides starvation, was scurvy. While the Norse diet wasn't entirely devoid of vitamin C, they ate wild berries in the summer and certain greens. It was a constant, low-level threat, especially during the long winters. The image of a fearsome Viking warrior laid low by bleeding gums and aching joints is a pathetic but brutally realistic one. You look down at your empty bowl, then at the meager supplies hanging in the smoky darkness. You've been here less than a day, and the most romanticized, powerful civilization of the early Middle Ages has been reduced to a fundamental, terrifying question: will there be enough to eat tomorrow? The glamour of the Viking Age dies right here, in a simple wooden bowl filled with grey, lumpy porridge. The last spoonful of porridge is a distant memory, and any notion of a leisurely morning is shattered when the man who offered you the dried fish nudges you towards the door. There's no verbal command, just an expectant look that says everyone works. The concept of a day off, a weekend, or a holiday doesn't exist here. There are feast days, certainly, tied to the seasons and the gods, but the daily rhythm is one of relentless, unending labor. Survival is a full-time job with mandatory, unpaid overtime. You step back out into the grey dump air. The village is a hive of activity, a stark contrast to the sleepy gloom of the longhouse. Every single person, from children who can barely walk to the elderly with stooped backs, has a task. Life here is a finely tuned machine, and you are a new, completely unqualified cog. You are pointed towards a large, steaming pile behind the longhouse. It's the accumulated manure and soiled straw from the animals that spent the night inside with you. Communicated through a series of simple, unambiguous gestures is to shovel this into a rough-looking wooden wheelbarrow and haul it to a designated field a short walk from the village. The pitchfork they give you is heavy and crudely made, the handle worn smooth by years of use. The work is disgusting. The smell is overpowering, a concentrated version of the background scent you've been trying to ignore. But it's also brutally hard. The muck is heavy and wet, and the wheelbarrow with its single wobbly wooden wheel is a nightmare to control on the uneven muddy ground. Within minutes, your back aches. Your hands, soft and unused to this kind of labor, are already starting to feel rough. You look around and see the division of labor that defines this society. The men are largely focused on tasks requiring heavy strength or specialized skills. A group is working on a long ship pulled up on the shore, the rhythmic thwack of their adzes shaping a new plank. Another is sharpening axes and spears, the grating sound of stone on metal setting your teeth on edge. They are mending fences, tending to the larger livestock out in the pastures, and preparing for the endless cycle of fishing and farming. The women's work is just as arduous, if not more so. It is a domain of constant, repetitive tasks that keep the community from falling apart. You see women grinding grain between two heavy stones, a mind-numbingly tedious process that turns raw barley into the flour for your porridge. Others are spinning wool into thread using a simple drop spindle, their hands moving in a blur of practiced motion that will take them all day to produce a pitifully small amount of yarn. Churning butter, preserving food, tending the small vegetable gardens, the cow garden of course, raising the children who are running underfoot. Even the children are working. Small boys are carrying water from the well, their faces set with concentration. Little girls are learning to spin and mend, their tiny fingers fumbling with the wool. There is no concept of childhood as a time of protected play. It's an apprenticeship for adulthood, and it starts as soon as you can follow an instruction. One of the great debates among historians of the Viking Age revolves around the precise economic role of women. The sagas written centuries later by Christian men often portray women in domestic roles or as powerful, scheming figures influencing events from the background. But archaeological evidence, like keys found in female graves, suggests women held significant household authority. They were literally the keepers of the wealth, the food, the textiles, the locked chest. Was the woman of the longhouse a housewife in the modern sense, or was she more of a CEO, managing the complex logistics of the farmstead? While the men were away trading or raiding, seeing the sheer scope of their work, you lean heavily towards CEO. As you dump another load of manure, your muscles screaming in protest, you realize that every single object you've seen so far is the product of this immense, shared effort. The bowl you ate from was carved from wood. The spoon was whittled by hand. The clothes on your back were the result of someone shearing a sheep, cleaning the wool, spinning it, weaving it into cloth, and then sewing it together with a bone needle. The longhouse itself was a monumental undertaking of felling trees and shaping timbers. There are no factories, no supply chains, no convenience stores. Everything is made, grown, or caught right here. You pause for a moment to catch your breath, leaning on the pitchfork. Your hands are already blistering. Your back is a knot of pain. You've been working for maybe an hour, and you feel completely spent. The man who assigned you the task walks by and grunts, not in disapproval, but in a neutral, matter-of-fact way that simply means keep going. There is no sympathy here. Work isn't a choice, it's a condition of being alive. And you have a whole day of it ahead of you. As you toil away with the manure, covered in filth and nursing your aching muscles, you start to observe the subtle interactions between the people around you. Not everyone is shoveling muck. The man who is overseeing the ship repairs, for instance, doesn't seem to be doing much physical labor himself. He points, he speaks with authority, and others listen. The woman who runs the longhouse directs the other women with a quiet confidence that leaves no room for argument. You're beginning to see the invisible lines of the Norse social structure, a rigid hierarchy that dictates every aspect of life. At the very top is the chieftain, or Jarl, the man overseeing the ship repairs. He likely owns most of the land, the ship, and a good portion of the livestock. His authority comes from wealth, a strong lineage, and most importantly, his proven success as a leader in raids and trade. He is the law, the general, and the chief executive all in one. His longhouse is the largest. His clothes are of a finer weave and might even have some color, a rare and expensive luxury, and his diet is certainly better than your grey porridge. Below the Jarl or the Carl lay or Carls. This is the great middle class of Viking society, and it's where you, by sheer luck, seem to have landed for now. A Carl is a freeman. He can own land, bear arms, and speak at the local assembly, the thing. The man who assigned you the manure task is a Carl. He owns his own small farmstead, works his own land with his family, and owes allegiance to the Jarl. He is master of his own home, but a follower in the wider world. But it's conditional. If he angers the Jarl or falls into debt, his position is precarious. You are, for all intents and purposes, a guest worker on his farm, and your continued well-being depends on your utility. And then there is the group at the very bottom of the ladder. You see them now working at the most undesirable tasks with a submissive, downcast air. They are the thralls, slaves. They are not people, they are property. They can be bought, sold, beaten, or killed at their owner's whim. They have no rights, no voice, no hope of justice. They are the spoils of war, the children of other thralls, or freemen who fell into such deep debt that they had to sell themselves into servitude. You watch as a thrall, a young man not much older than you with blank, defeated eyes, is tasked with cleaning the fish guts from the processing area. No one speaks to him unless it is to give an order. He moves with a slow, resigned efficiency, his existence barely acknowledged. The stark reality hits you: this could have been your fate. If you had been captured in a raid instead of just appearing, you wouldn't be shoveling manure as a temporary guest, you'd be doing it for the rest of your short, miserable life. One of the more chillingly practical aspects of this system is the role thralls played in the Norse economy. They were a cornerstone of it. They performed the most back-breaking labor that allowed the Carls and Jarl the freedom to pursue more profitable ventures like trading and raiding. Jarl's wealth wasn't just measured in silver and land, but in the number of thralls he owned. Here's a peculiar and grim little fact that historians debate: the ritual of thrall sacrifice. Some sagas and historical accounts, like that of the Arab traveler Ibn Fadlan, describe elaborate ship burials for chieftains where a female thrall would be volunteered to accompany her master into the afterlife. The descriptions are grim and detailed, but archaeological evidence for this is sparse. Was this a common practice, a necessary part of a great man's funeral, or was it a rare, exaggerated ritual? Sensationalized by foreign observers and later saga writers, academics are divided. Some argue the accounts are largely factual, while others believe they represent an extreme and unrepresentative sliver of Norse custom. Either way, it's a terrifying thought that your life could be considered an accessory to someone else's death. You lean on your pitchfork, catching your breath, and you look from the authoritative Jarl to the hard-working Carl and then to the silent. You understand now that this society isn't just about survival against the elements, it's about navigating a rigid and unforgiving social pyramid. Your identity is not your own. It is defined by your relationship to the person above you and the person below you. You are not just you. You are a Carl, a freeman, and that title, you now realize, is the most valuable thing you possess. It's a fragile shield against the abyss of thralldom, but as always just one bad decision, one lost battle, or one failed harvest away. The weight of that thought is heavier than any wheelbarrow full of manure. After what feels like an eternity of hauling manure, you are finally assigned a different task. The woman of the longhouse, the Carl's wife, gestures for you to help her mend a woolen sail. You sit down on a log, grateful to be off your feet, and she hands you a needle made of polished bone and a thick, scratchy thread of spun wool. The sail itself is a monstrous thing, a patchwork of coarse, heavy cloth that smells faintly of salt and mildew. Your job is to stitch up a small tear. As you fumble with the needle, your clumsy fingers a stark contrast to her swift, practiced movements. You become acutely aware of your own clothing. In your previous life, you probably never gave a second thought to the fabric touching your skin. Now, it's all you can think about. You are wearing a simple, undyed tunic made of wool. It's heavy, it's oily, and it's incredibly itchy. The natural lanolin in the wool makes it water-resistant, a crucial feature in this damp, cold climate, but it also gives the garment a slightly greasy feel and a distinctly sheep-like smell. You are, in essence, wearing a sheep. Beneath the tunic, you have a linen undertunic, which is slightly softer but still coarse by modern standards. Linen, made from the flax plant, was a laborious product to create, requiring soaking, beating, and spinning the plant fibers. It was more comfortable against the skin but less warm and insulating than wool. The ideal Viking outfit was this combination: a linen layer to wick away sweat and a wool layer to provide warmth and protection from the elements. It was a simple, effective, and deeply uncomfortable system. You look at the clothes of the people around you. Almost everything is a shade of brown, grey, or off-white, the natural colors of the wool. Color was a luxury. Dyes were made from plants, minerals, and even insects, and the process was time-consuming and expensive. A flash of color, a red trim on a cloak, a blue striped pattern on a dress was a blatant display of wealth. The Jarl, you notice, wears a cloak of a deep, rich red, a color likely derived from the madder root. His clothing doesn't just keep him warm, it screams his status from 100 paces. As for your own itchy outfit, you realize it represents an enormous amount of labor. Someone sheared the sheep, cleaned and carded the wool, spun it into thread, wove the thread into cloth on a vertical loom, and then painstakingly cut and sewed the garment by hand. The sagas often depict noble women weaving as a sign of their domestic skill, but in reality, it was a task that consumed countless hours for women of all classes. A single tunic like the one you're wearing could represent weeks of work. Clothes were not disposable, they were precious heirlooms, repaired and patched until they literally fell apart. The tear you are mending is not a flaw, it's just part of the garment's life cycle. This leads to a quirky little detail that archaeologists have puzzled over Viking grooming tools. In graves they have found an abundance of combs, tweezers, and even smaller spoons for cleaning out earwax. This seems to contradict the popular image of the dirty, unkempt barbarian. The truth is likely somewhere in the middle. They probably didn't bathe daily, but they clearly cared about their appearance, especially their hair and beards, which were often elaborately combed, braided, and cared for. One of the ongoing debates is whether this was purely for vanity, or if it had a practical purpose. Was a well-groomed beard instead a symbol, Or was it just easier to keep lice and other pests out of a neat braid given the close quarters of the longhouse? You suspect practicality played a huge role. A clean beard is a louse-free beard. Your fingers are sore, and you've managed to prick yourself with the bone needle at least 3 times. The thread is thick and uncooperative. You look at the small, neat stitches the woman makes, and then at your own large, clumsy ones. There's a quiet judgment in the air. Your inability to perform this simple, fundamental task is another mark of your otherness. You can't hold manure efficiently, and you can't sew. You pull the itchy wall of your sleeve away from your skin for a moment, trying to get some relief. It's a futile gesture. The fabric is a constant, irritating presence. It's a reminder that in this world, comfort is a distant dream. Functionality is everything. Your clothes aren't a fashion statement, they are a tool for survival. Your first and most intimate layer of defense against a world that is constantly trying to soak you, chill you, and wear you down. A key piece of technology that powered their raids and trade, and realize it's made of the same itchy stuff as your tunic. The entire Viking Age, in a way, was built on the back of a sheep. The day wears on, a seemingly endless cycle of small, necessary tasks. After the sail mending, you are put to work carrying buckets of water from the stream, a task that is surprisingly taxing on your arms and shoulders. Every moment is a confrontation with the raw, unfiltered reality of this existence, and one aspect of it becomes increasingly, uncomfortably obvious: the complete and utter lack of modern sanitation. There are no bathrooms, no running water, no soap as you know it. You ask through a clumsy series of gestures where one relieves oneself. A boy points you to a small, unassuming trench dug a short distance from the houses. It's the communal latrine. It is open, unsheltered, and buzzing with flies. There's no toilet paper, of course. People use a handful of moss or leaves, or simply nothing at all. The smell is predictable. You take care of your business as quickly as humanly possible, feeling exposed and deeply, profoundly unforgiving. This brings you to the question of bathing. How did they stay clean? The answer is they didn't. Not by your standards. However, this doesn't mean they were content to live in filth. The Norse had a concept of cleanliness. It was just different. Their primary method of bathing was the laugardagi, which literally means washing day and is the origin of the modern Saturday in Scandinavian languages. Once a week, perhaps. The community would heat stones in a large fire and then drop them into a trough of water to create a makeshift hot tub. It was a communal bath, a place to soak away the grime of the week's labor. But soap not in the way you think of it. Viking soap was a harsh, lye-based substance made from animal fat and ash. It would have been abrasive and probably smelled vaguely of bacon on campfire. Its primary use might not have even been for personal hygiene, but for tasks like treating and bleaching linen. Some archaeological finds suggest they might have used it to bleach their hair, as a lighter hair color was considered attractive. The idea of a fearsome Viking warrior meticulously bleaching his beard with a harsh, smelly soap is a wonderfully strange image. Without regular, effective soap and with infrequent bathing, the level of bacteria on skin, clothes, and surfaces would have been staggering. A small cut, something you wouldn't even think about, could easily become infected and life-threatening. This constant, invisible threat of infection was a part of daily life. You look at your own hands, now covered in blisters from the pitchfork and small cuts from the needle. Each one is a potential death sentence. Historians are still debating the precise frequency and nature of Viking hygiene practices. The sagas contain references to washing hands before meals, and as we've seen, archaeological finds of grooming tools are common. An English chronicler from the 13th century, John of Wallingford, complained that the Danish Vikings were too clean, as they combed their hair daily, bathed every Saturday, and changed their woolen clothes frequently, which made them dangerously popular with English women. Was this a genuine observation, or was it propaganda meant to portray the Norse as vain and effeminate? Despite their fearsome reputation, it's hard to say for certain. The truth is likely that hygiene standards varied greatly. A wealthy jarl in a trading hub like Berka might have had access to better clothes and more opportunities to wash than a poor farmer in an isolated fjord. You stand by the stream, splashing cold water on your face. It's bracing, unclean, a momentary relief from the smoke and stench of the village. You notice some of the women downstream, vigorously beating clothes against a large flat rock. This was laundry day. They used the harsh slice open the abrasive power of rocks and sand to scrub the dirt out of the heavy woolen and linen garments. It's another back-breaking task, and the clothes will likely never be truly clean, only less dirty. You look at your reflection in the water. Your face is smudged with dirt, your hair is greasy and smells of smoke, and your clothes feel like a cage of itchiness. You feel a deep, primal longing for a hot shower, for the clean scent of shampoo, for the simple, miraculous luxury of a bar of soap. It's a craving so intense it's almost a physical pain. You realize that a huge part of your modern sense of well-being, of personal dignity even, is tied to being clean. Here, that's a luxury you cannot afford. You are dirty, you will likely stay dirty, and you have to get used to it. The choice between spending hours washing clothes and spending those same hours securing food is no choice at all. Survival always comes first. In the late afternoon, as you're helping to mend a rickety fence that keeps the sheep from wandering into the vegetable patch, a minor commotion erupts near the longhouse. It's not loud or violent, just a tense, heated exchange between two men. You recognize one of them as your host, the hard-working Carl. The other is his neighbor from the next farmstead over, a burly man with a fiery red beard. As far as you can piece together from their angry gestures and the few words you're beginning to recognize, is a single sheep. The red-bearded man is claiming that one of your host's sheep, which has a distinctive black patch over its eye, has been consistently breaking through the fence and eating the turnips in his garden. Your host is adamantly denying it, insisting his fences are secure and his sheep are well behaved. The argument grows louder, their voices rise, and their postures become more aggressive. They are standing close, chest to chest, and for a moment you think it might come to blows. This isn't just an argument about a sheep and some turnips. You're witnessing a critical aspect of Viking culture, the concept of honor. Honor, or air, wasn't an abstract virtue, it was a tangible public commodity. It was your reputation, your social standing, and your family's good name all rolled into one. To have your word questioned, to be accused of carelessness or theft even of a few turnips, was a direct attack on your honor. And an attack on your honor had to be met, swiftly and publicly. Backing down wasn't an option. To admit fault, even if you were in the wrong, would be a sign of weakness. It would invite future challenges and diminish your standing in the community. So the argument continues, a delicate and dangerous dance of accusation and denial. The red-bearded man isn't just angry about his turnips, he feels disrespected. Your host isn't just defending his sheep, he's defending his integrity as a competent farmer and an honorable man. The women and other men nearby stop their work to watch. This is not just a private dispute, it's a public performance. The outcome will be noted and remembered by everyone. If your host can't handle this small challenge from his neighbor, how can he be trusted to stand with the Jarl in a shield wall? Finally, after several tense minutes, the Jarl himself, attracted by the noise, strides over. He listens to both men, his face impassive. He doesn't issue a ruling or a judgment. He simply puts a hand on each man's shoulder and speaks in a low, firm voice. The argument subsides, not because the issue is resolved, but because a higher authority has intervened. The men part, still glowering, the tension still hanging thick in the air. The problem hasn't been solved, it's just been postponed. This incident highlights a strange duality in Norse society. They had a strong and complex legal system, which we'll get to. But they also had a deeply ingrained culture of personal pride that could easily bypass violent confrontation. A key question historians grapple with is how these two systems coexisted. When did you take a grievance to the thing, the public assembly, and when did you feel compelled to handle it yourself? With words or with an axe, the sagas are full of characters who wrestle with this choice. Acting too quickly could make you an outlaw, but acting too slowly could make you a coward. It was a constant, high-stakes balancing act. A quirky, related concept is that of the knee, a formal, poetic insult. These weren't just simple slurs, they were often elaborate, alliterative verses designed to inflict the maximum amount of shame. Accusing a man of cowardice or of being unmanly, the ultimate insult through a well-crafted poem, could be more damaging than a physical blow. Some insults were considered so severe that they were outlawed, and the poet could be prosecuted. It's a fascinating idea that words could be legally recognized as weapons. As you go back to fixing the fence, you look at that black patched sheep, now placidly chewing its cud, completely oblivious to the diplomatic crisis it has caused. The argument is over for now, but you can feel the resentment simmering. These two men are neighbors. Their children play together. Their families rely on each other for help during the harvest. And now, because of a sheep and a few root vegetables, there is a fracture in that relationship. A seed of distrust has been planted. You realize that in a small, isolated community like this, your biggest threat might not be a foreign raider or a harsh winter. It might just be the guy who lives next door. A few days after the sheep incident, the simmering tension in the village finds a formal outlet. Word spreads that the regional thing is being convened. This isn't just a casual gathering, it's the central institution of Viking Age law and governance, a courthouse, and a community festival. Everyone from the surrounding farmsteads is expected to attend. It's a social obligation and a political necessity. You travel with your host family, walking for a couple of hours along a well-worn path that winds through forests and fields. The destination is a large open field, marked by a circle of standing stones. It has the feeling of a sacred or important place. Already, hundreds of people are gathered. It's a riot of activity. There are merchants setting up temporary stalls, selling everything from pottery to iron tools. There are children playing, men trading news and stories, and women catching up with relatives from other villages. It's the Viking Age equivalent of a county fair. But at the center of it all is the Logberg or Loark, a raised platform where the most important men the jar, Ellis and the wealthy landowners take their seats. Presiding over the whole affair is the law speaker, a man elected for his deep knowledge of the complex, unwritten laws of the land. His job is not to be a judge, but to be a living repository of legal tradition. At the beginning of each thing, he would recite a portion of the law from memory, ensuring it was never forgotten. You watch as the formal proceedings begin. The carl who she calls the troubled, his red-bearded neighbor both step forward. This is their chance to air their grievance in a public forum. The neighbor makes his case first, speaking formally, laying out his complaint about the damaged turnips and the insult to his honor. Then your host responds, defending his reputation and denying any fault. There are no lawyers, no robes. There are just two men, their peers, and the weight of tradition. After both sides have spoken, the assembly murmurs. The jar Ellis confer. This isn't about finding the truth in a modern, forensic sense. There is no evidence, no cross-examination. It's about finding a resolution that the community can accept, a way to restore balance and prevent the dispute from escalating into violence. In this case, a settlement is proposed. Your host will not admit guilt, but he will give his neighbor a small bundle of dried fish as a gesture of goodwill to heal the friendship. The neighbor, having had his complaint heard publicly, accepts. Honor is satisfied for now, and a potential blood feud is averted. This is the thing in action. It was the bedrock of their society, a remarkably democratic institution for its time. All freemen, the Carle had the right to speak and vote on the matters brought before the assembly. They could pass new laws, settle inheritance disputes, and even elect or depose chieftains. It was a system built on consensus and public participation. However, it had its dark side. The thing was also where punishments were decided. For a serious crime like murder or a major theft, the verdict could be outlawry. This was a fate arguably worse than death. An outlaw was stripped of all legal protection. He could be killed by anyone without penalty, his property could be seized. And anyone who helped him would also be breaking the law. He was a ghost forced to flee to the wilderness or to a foreign land, forever cut from his family and community. A strange and debated aspect of Viking law is the use of duels, or holmgang in some cases. A legal dispute could be settled by a formal, ritualized fight. The rules were specific. It would take place on a small island or a marked-off piece of land, and there were rules about shields, weapons, and first blood. Was this a common and accepted legal tool? a way for the gods to show who was in the right, or was it, as some historians suggest, a literary trope, a dramatic invention of the saga writers to spice up their stories? The evidence is ambiguous. While there are legal texts that mention rules for dueling, there's little archaeological proof that it was a widespread practice. The idea of settling a lawsuit with an axe fight is peak Viking, but it might be more fiction than fact. As the thing continues, other cases are brought forward: a dispute over a property line, a negotiation for a marriage alliance. You watch, fascinated. This is a society that runs without a central government, without a police force, without prisons. It runs on a delicate balance of public reputation, communal pressure, and the ever-present threat of shame or violence. The law is not an abstract code written in a book. It is a living, breathing conversation between the people themselves. It's messy, it's personal, and it's surprisingly effective. You realize that the man who shouted about his turnips wasn't just being petty, he was engaging in the first, crucial step of this ancient legal process. It's a system designed not just to punish the guilty, but to hold the fragile fabric of society together, one mended friendship at a time. The thing successfully resolved the turnip and sheep affair with a compromise of dried fish, but you get the distinct feeling that the peace is fragile. The red-bearded neighbor accepted the settlement, but he did so with a grim face. The eye contact minimal. In the days that follow, you notice a chill between the two households. The easy greetings are gone, replaced by curt nods. The children are no longer playing together between the farmsteads. The dispute was settled legally, but the personal slight, the wound to honor, continues to fester. This is the dark underbelly of the honor system you witnessed. When the formal mechanisms of the thing fail to truly satisfy both parties, the conflict can go underground, simmering for years, waiting for a new spark. This is how a blood feud begins. It's not necessarily an immediate explosion of violence. It's often a slow, creeping disease that infects a community, poisoning relationships and setting families against each other for generations. Your host, the Carl, seems more on edge. He spends more time sharpening his axe, not with the pragmatic air of a man preparing to chop wood, but with a tense, focused energy. He is teaching his eldest son, a boy of no more than 14, how to handle a spear. The lesson is no longer just for hunting, it has the feel of combat training. The entire family is aware of the shift in the atmosphere, from any direction. The concept of a blood feud is central to many of the Icelandic sagas, which are our main literary source for the social dynamics of the Viking Age. A story might begin with a small insult, just like the one you saw. That insult leads to a blow, the blow leads to a killing, and that single killing creates a legal and moral obligation for the victim's family to seek revenge. They could demand a hefty payment in silver, called we or guild or man money, as compensation. The amount varied depending on the victim's social status. A less life was worth far more than a car less, but often accepting money for a slain relative was seen as dishonorable. The only way to truly restore the family's honor was to take a life for a life, and so a member of the first victim's family would kill someone from the offender's family. Now, the second family is honor-bound to seek revenge, and the cycle continues, spiraling outwards, pulling in cousins, in-laws, until two entire clans are locked in a multi-generational war of attrition. Historians have long debated how accurately the sagas reflect the reality of blood feuds. Were these cycles of vengeance as common and as devastating as the stories suggest, or were the sagas, written hundreds of years after the events they describe, cherry-picking the most dramatic and violent conflicts for entertainment value? It's likely a bit of both. The legal system of the thing and the or guild payments existed precisely to prevent society from constantly tearing itself apart. The fact that these mechanisms were so developed suggests that the threat of feuds was very real. The sagas, then, might be stories about what happens when the system fails. One of the more bizarre and chilling details related to this culture of vengeance is the idea of a revenge baby. There are accounts in the sagas of a man who, feeling he is too old or not powerful enough to carry out a necessary act of vengeance himself, will father a son for the specific purpose of raising him to be the instrument of that revenge. The child grows up with this single, terrible purpose instilled in him from birth. It's a chilling concept of life, created not out of life, created not out of love or hope, but as a weapon to be aimed at a family enemy. You watch the Carl's son practicing with the spear, his face a mask of concentration. Is this his future, where he be forced to carry the burden of his father's perceived slights? You see the red-bearded neighbor in the distance, repairing his own fence. He too has sons. Are they also learning to handle weapons with a new grim purpose? The air in the village, which once felt pragmatic and industrious, now feels thick with unspoken threats. Every interaction is freighted with new meaning. A shared glance across a field is no longer just a glance, it's a sizing up, an assessment. The community that gathered so boisterously at the thing is now subtly dividing into factions and alliances. You realize the profound insecurity of this world. There is no police force to call, no higher authority to guarantee your safety. Your security rests entirely on your own strength, your family's reputation, and the fragile goodwill of your neighbors. That goodwill, you've now seen, can be shattered by something as trivial as a hungry sheep. The thing may have put a legal patch on the problem, but the tear in the social fabric remains, and you can't shake the feeling that it's only a matter of time before someone pulls at the loose threads. The fragile peace of the village is shattered not by the simmering feud, but by something far more common and indiscriminate. A fisherman, a young, strong man you'd seen hauling nets just a few days ago, slips while climbing the slick, mossy rocks by the shore. He falls, and a sharp branch gouges a deep, ragged cut in his calf. It's a nasty wound, but in your world, it's a minor emergency, a trip to an urgent care clinic for cleaning, stitches, a tetanus shot, and a course of antibiotics. It is a death sentence. He is carried back to his longhouse, his face pale with pain. The village healer, an old woman known for her knowledge of herbs and charms, is summoned. You watch as she examines the wound. Her methods are a terrifying blend of folk wisdom and pure superstition. She washes the gash not with an antiseptic, but with stale urine, a common practice due to its ammonia content, which was believed to have cleansing properties. Then, she packs the wound tightly with a poultice of moss, cobwebbed, and what looks suspiciously like dirt. She mutters a series of chants calling on Eye, the Norse goddess of healing, to mend the flesh. There is no concept of germ theory here. The enemy is not the invisible bacteria now multiplying in the man's leg, it's bad spirits, or perhaps the wound is the result of a curse from a rival. The treatments are designed to appease these supernatural forces as much as they are to treat the physical injury. You, with your 21st century knowledge, are standing by, helpless, watching a man die in slow motion. You want to scream at them to boil the water, to leave the wound open to the air, to do anything other than shove dirt into it. But you can't. You have no language to explain microbes, no authority, and your panic would only be seen as madness. Over the next 2 days, the inevitable happens. The man develops a raging fever. The leg swells to twice its normal size, the skin turning a dark, angry red, hot to the touch. The smell of infection begins to fill the small longhouse, a sickly sweet odor that overpowers even the usual smoke and livestock smells. The man is delirious, crying out in pain and seeing visions. The healer applies more poultices and chants more prayers, but everyone knows it's hopeless. This was the brutal reality of health and medicine in the Viking Age. Life expectancy was short, not because people aged faster, but because so many died young from things we consider trivial. Infant and childhood mortality were staggeringly high. A simple childhood illness like strep throat could easily lead to rheumatic fever and heart failure. A broken bone, if it didn't set properly, could lead to a lifetime of crippling pain or an open wound that would never heal. And childbirth was one of the most dangerous things a woman could go through, for both herself and the baby. Historians who study Viking skeletons, a field called paleopathology, can read the stories of these hardships in the bones themselves. They find evidence of arthritis, even in young adults, from a lifetime of hard labor. They see healed fractures that are badly misaligned. But one of the most debated topics is the evidence of battlefield surgery. Some skeletons have been found with incredible injuries, sword cuts to the skull, for example, that show signs of healing. This suggests that some individuals survived grievous wounds. How the sagas describe battlefield medics, or El Canir who could assess wounds. A common, if gruesome, diagnostic tool was to feed a wounded warrior a strong-smelling onion and garlic soup. If the smell leaked out of a wound in their torso, it meant the abdominal cavity was pierced, and the wound was considered untreatable. Another fascinating and slightly horrifying tidbit is the potential use of magic mushrooms in medicine. Some species of fungi, like certain types of fly agaric, have hallucinogenic and pain-numbing properties. It's been speculated that these might have been used as a crude form of anesthetic during painful procedures, like setting a broken bone or amputating a gangrenous limb. The patient wouldn't feel the pain, but they would be on a terrifying psychedelic trip. But in a world without morphine, any escape from agony would be a blessing. On the third day, the young fisherman dies. His passing is met not with shock, but with a kind of weary, fatalistic resignation. His wife's grief is raw and terrible, but for the rest of the community, this is a familiar story. Death is a constant companion, an expected visitor. There is no autopsy, no investigation. He was strong, and now he is gone. That is the way of things. You watch as his body is prepared for the funeral. You feel a profound sense of helplessness and anger. All the honor, all the laws, all the strength and resilience of these people are utterly powerless against an enemy they can't even see. The fear you felt so far of hunger, of violence, of social shame is replaced by a new, more profound dread. In this world, your own body is a ticking time bomb, and the slightest mishap, the most trivial of injuries, can trigger its detonation. The death of the fisherman casts a pall over the village, a grim reminder of every earner's mortality. A few weeks later, you are initiated into another one of the age's quiet, agonizing tortures of toothache. It starts as a dull, intermittent throb in one of your molars, a familiar annoyance. You try to ignore it, but in a world without painkillers, ignoring pain is not a viable strategy. Within a day, the dull throb escalates into a sharp, relentless piercing agony. The pain is a universe unto itself. It radiates from your jaw up to your temple, making it impossible to think, to concentrate, to do anything but exist in a state of pure misery. The simple act of chewing your breakfast porridge is an ordeal. The cold air hitting the tooth feels like a jolt of electricity. You can't sleep. You pace the floor of the longhouse at night, holding your jaw, your mind consumed by the white-hot nerve endings screaming in your skull. There is no concept of dental hygiene. The Viking diet, low in sugar, was actually much better for teeth than later European diets. Archaeologists have found that Viking skeletons often have surprisingly few cavities compared to people from, say, the 17th century. But their teeth were still subject to immense wear and tear. The gritty, stone-ground flour in their bread and porridge acted like sandpaper, wearing down the enamel over the years, combined with using their teeth as tools to grip leather, to cut thread lead to cracks, chips, and eventually exposed nerves. You try the local remedies. The healer woman, the same one who treated the fisherman, gives you a foul-tasting paste of herbs to pack around the tooth. It does nothing. Someone else suggests chewing on a piece of willow bark, which contains salicylic acid, the natural precursor to aspirin. It provides a fleeting, barely perceptible dulling of the pain, but it's like trying to put out a forest fire with a cup of water. Your work performance plummets. You are slow, clumsy, and irritable. Your host, the Carl, is sympathetic up to a point. Everyone has experienced the hell of a bad tooth, but his sympathy has its limits. A worker who cannot work is a liability. The unspoken consensus grows the tooth has to go. The dentist is the village blacksmith. He is the man with the strongest hands and the best set of iron tongs. The procedure is performed in broad daylight, in the middle of the village, because good light is essential. There is no anesthetic. Your operating chair is a stump. To strong men, friends of the blacksmith, hold your shoulders down, not out of malice but because the next few moments are going to be excruciating, and your instinct will be to flee. The blacksmith approaches, his face grim with concentration. He tells you to open your mouth. You see the tool he's going to use, a pair of crude iron pliers, fresh from the forge, probably used to pull nails out of wood just an hour ago. They are not sterilized. He peers into your mouth, identifies the offending molar, and gets a grip on it with the pliers. The first sensation is a crushing pressure that makes your entire skull feel like it's going to crack. Then he begins to pull, untwist. The pain is blinding, a supernova of pure agony that erases thought, sound, and sight. It is a primal, pre-verbal horror. The root of the tooth anchored deep in your jawbone, and the blacksmith has to fight it, rocking it back and forth to break it free from the ligaments. You hear a sickening crunching, grinding sound that seems to be coming from the center of your own brain. Your body convulses against the man holding you down. And then, with a final, brutal yank, it's out. The blacksmith steps back, holding the bloody molar in his pliers. The release from the sharp, nerve-deep pain is instantaneous and glorious. But it's replaced by a new throbbing, deep-socket pain and the overwhelming taste of blood. Your mouth is a mess. The blacksmith gives you a wad of moss to bite down on to stop the bleeding and pats you on the shoulder. A fascinating debate among dental anthropologists is the existence of deliberate dental modification among the Vikings. A number of skeletons, particularly from the island of Gotland in Sweden, have been found with horizontal grooves filed into their front teeth. These aren't from wear and tear, they are intentional, precisely carved marks. Why did they do this? Were they status symbols for a particular group of warriors or merchants? Were the grooves filled with colored pigment to create a terrifying or impressive smile? No one knows for sure. It's a strange, painful-looking piece of Viking vanity. You spend the rest of the day in a daze, spitting blood, your jaw aching with a deep, bone-bruising pain. You can eat, but the sharp, maddening nerve pain is gone. And in its place is a strange sense of relief and a new level of respect for the sheer toughness of these people. They endure this. They endure childbirth without epidurals, infections without antibiotic. Pain is not an emergency to be medicated away. It is a fundamental, expected part of the human experience, as common and as unavoidable as the wind and the rain. You touch your swollen jaw and feel the empty space where your tooth used to be. It's a permanent, physical reminder of the price of survival in a world before comfort. In the wake of the fisherman's death and your own brutal dental experience, you begin to notice the invisible architecture that holds this society's psyche together, its belief system. It's not a religion of quiet Sunday services and gentle hymns. It's a raw, fatalistic worldview, perfectly suited to the harsh realities you've been experiencing. It's the worship of the Sur and Vanir, the two families of Norse god. You see it in the small, everyday rituals. Before a meal, a man might murmur a quiet word to Thor, not for the salvation of his soul, but for the strength to work the fields. The healer woman's chants were not just to Herbler, but to the goddess Sire. When a thunderstorm rolls in over the fjord, the villagers don't just see a weather phenomenon, they hear the thunder of Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, as he battles the giants, the forces of chaos that constantly threaten their world. The gods are not distant, benevolent beings. They are powerful, flawed, and deeply human in their appetites and ambitions. Odin, the All-Father, is the god of wisdom, poetry, and war, but he is also a trickster, a manipulator who sacrificed his own eye for knowledge and who wanders the earth in disguise. Thor is the mighty protector of humanity, but he is also hot-tempered, not particularly bright. Freyja, the goddess of love and beauty, is also a fierce warrior who claims half of the slain in battle. These are not gods you pray to for forgiveness or unconditional love. They are powers you appease, bargain with, and respect. You offer them a portion of your kill after a successful hunt, or you sacrifice a ram to ensure a good harvest. It's a transactional relationship. You give the gods their due, and in return, you hope they will look favorably upon your endeavors, or at the very least, leave you alone. The center of this belief system is a profound and unshakable concept, weird or fate. You hear the word used in conversation. After the fisherman's death, someone might say, his thread was spun short. This is a direct reference to the Norns, three mystical female beings who sit at the base of Yggdrasil, the world tree, and weave the fate of every single god and mortal. Your destiny is a thread in their grand tapestry. Its texture, it's all predetermined from the moment of your birth. This fatalism is not depressing or paralyzing to the people here. On the contrary, it seems to be liberating. If the outcome of your life is already decided, if the day and hour of your death are already woven into the fabric of reality, then there is no point in cowering or being afraid. The only thing you can control is how you meet your fate. You can face it with courage and honor, or with fear and shame. This is why a warrior would charge into a shield wall with seeming recklessness. If it is not his day to die, no sword can touch him. If it is, no amount of caution can save him. All he can do is die well, earning a place in Valhalla and a reputation that will live on in the stories of his kinsmen. A quirky and somewhat comical detail from Norse mythology is the story of Thor cross-dressing as Freyr to retrieve his stone and hammer from a giant. The mighty god of thunder, decked out in a wedding dress, a veil, and a heavy necklace, has to sit through a wedding feast while his companion, Loki, makes up increasingly absurd excuses for the bride's unladylike appetite. She eats an entire ox and ate salmon. It's a hilarious story that shows the Norse weren't afraid to portray their gods with a sense of humor and absurdity. They were not just distant or inspiring figures, they were characters in a grand, cosmic drama full of tragedy, heroism, and slapstick comedy. You sit by the fire in the longhouse one evening, listening to the carl tell his children a story about Odin's eight-legged horse, Sleipnir. The story is not just entertainment, it's a lesson in cosmology, a reminder of the interconnections of the nine worlds, and a reinforcement of the values of their culture. You realize that this belief system is the ultimate coping mechanism. It gives meaning to suffering, context to chaos, and courage in the face of a brutal, unforgiving world. Your fate may be fixed, but your story, the tale of how you lived your life and faced, still yours to write. For the people of the Viking Age, that was the only kind of free will that mattered. The days grow shorter, the grey light of morning arriving later and fading sooner. A new kind of chill enters the air, a damp, penetrating cold that the weak autumn sun cannot dispel. The flurry of activity in the village takes on a new urgency. This is the final push before the arrival of winter. The last of the harvest must be brought in, the meat and fish must be salted or dried, and every crack in the longhouse walls must be chinked with moss and clay. The preparations are frantic, bordering on desperate. Everyone knows what's coming. And then, one morning you wake up to a world transformed. A thick blanket of snow has fallen overnight, silencing the landscape and burying the village in a sea of white. Winter has arrived. The door of the longhouse, which once stood open for most of the day, is now kept firmly shut. The world outside has become hostile, an alien landscape of wind and biting cold. For the next 4 to 5 months, the longhouse will not be just a home, it will be your entire universe. The first few days feel almost cozy. The fire burns brightly, the stored food is plentiful, and there's a sense of communal relief, of a great task, the harvest finally being completed. But the novelty wears off quickly. The reality of being trapped indoors with 30 other people and a dozen animals sets in. The smoke, which was once a mere annoyance, becomes a suffocating, inescapable presence. With the door and smoke almost sealed against the cold, the air quality plummets. Your throat is perpetually sore, your eyes constantly stream, and you develop a persistent, hacking cough that everyone else seems to share. They call it the soot lung. The smell intensifies to a level you thought was impossible. The stench of unwashed bodies, stale food, and animal waste, all confined in a poorly ventilated space, creates a thick, nauseating miasma. There is no escape. This is the air you breathe, day and night. The floor becomes a treacherous mix of mud, spilled food, and animal droppings. The line between the human living area and the livestock pen blurs until it practically disappears. Time itself seems to warp and stretch. The days are a monotonous cycle of darkness, dim light, and more darkness. The tasks become small, indoor activities. The men whittle wood, mend tools, and repair leather harnesses. The women spin endless threads of wool, weave cloth on their looms, and try to make the food stores last. Boredom is a palpable force, a heavy blanket that smothers the spirit. And then there's the psychological pressure. You are never alone. You have no privacy, no personal space, no moment of quiet reflection. Every conversation is public. Every argument is overheard. Every sigh is noted. The small annoyances of cohabitation, ignoble in the summer when you could escape outside, are now magnified 100-fold. The way a person chews their food, the sound of their snoring, the tone of their voice, it all grates on your nerve. The simmering feud between your host and his neighbor is now trapped in this smoky box with everyone else, a constant, low-level source of tension. A major point of debate for historians and archaeologists is how the Vikings managed their food supplies through this long, dark period. Sagas talk of great winter feasts, but for the average Carl, it was likely a period of slow-managed starvation. They would have calculated their rations with brutal precision. Was the best of the food, the salted meat and fish, consumed first, leaving only porridge for the final, lean months, or did they eat the porridge first, saving the good food for a midwinter morale boost? This logistical challenge, rationing for an unknown number of months, was the single most important intellectual task a household leader faced each year. A miscalculation meant starvation. One of the few respites from the crushing monotony was storytelling. In the evenings, with the wind howling outside, the family would gather around the fire, and someone would tell a story. It might be a heroic lay about Sigurd the Dragon Slayer, a bawdy tale about Thor and the giants, or a complex family saga detailing the feuds and fortunes of a great Icelandic clan. This was their television, their internet, their library. It was how they passed the time, reinforced their cultural values, and educated their children. The darkness of the longhouse, lit only by the flickering fire, was the perfect theater for these epic tales of monsters, heroes, and distant lands. As the weeks turn into months, you feel the effects of the confinement. The lack of sunlight, the poor nutrition, and the stagnant air leave you feeling perpetually tired and listless. The initial stockpile of food is dwindling at an alarming rate. The conversations have died down, replaced by a sullen silence. The faces around you are pale and gaunt in the firelight. This isn't the cozy communal hibernation you might have imagined. This is a siege. You are a garrison, besieged, white army of winter, and your only defenses are a turf roof, a smoky fire, and a dwindling pile of dried fish. You begin to understand that the most fearsome monster in the Norse world wasn't a dragon or a giant. It was the crushing, silent, and inevitable reality of winter. The winter drags on, a seemingly infinite tunnel of smoky darkness and mind-numbing boredom. The grand sagas and heroic poems can only fill so many evenings. The human spirit, even one as fatalistic and resilient as the Vikings, craves distraction and competition. You begin to see how they fought off the psychological decay of the long confinement through games and entertainment, most of which were as rough and competitive as the people playing them. Inside the longhouse, the most common pastime is board games. You see two men hunched over a wooden board, intently moving small pieces of carved bone or glass. They are likely playing HNE or King's Table. It's an ingenious and asymmetrical strategy game, a bit like chess but with a different objective. One player has a king in the center of the board, protected by a small group of defenders. The other player has a larger force of attackers positioned around the edges. The goal of the king's player is to get the king to safety in one of the corners of the board. The goal of the attacker is to surround and capture the king. It's a game of siege and escape, a perfect miniature of the Viking worldview of a small, ordered world, the king and his men constantly beset by the larger forces of chaos, the attackers. The games are not quiet, gentlemanly affairs. They are intense, with loud taunts, boisterous celebrations, and much slapping of the table. Wagers are often made not for money, which was rare in everyday life, but for favors, for a piece of equipment, or simply for the honor of winning. A victory in HNE is a small reassertion of one's cleverness and strategic prowess in a world where you otherwise feel powerless. When the weather breaks for a day or two, offering a brief respite from the howling wind, the villagers spill outside, desperate for fresh air and physical activity. The entertainment here is far more strenuous. The young men might engage in a form of wrestling called G-Lima, a surprisingly sophisticated martial art with complex rules about footwork and holds, where the goal is to throw your opponent to the ground. More common, however, are simple, brutal tests of strength. You watch a group of men gather around a large, smooth, round stone, a lifting stone. The challenge is simply to see who can lift it the highest. It's a raw, unambiguous display of masculine power. Another popular sport is a form of tug-of-war, but instead of a rope, they often used an animal hide, which would stretch and sometimes snap, sending both teams tumbling into the snow. One of the most debated and curious forms of Viking entertainment is the practice of man-matching, or poetic duels. This was a contest of wits rather than strength, where two individuals would trade inventive, often scathing, rhyming insults. This is the fighting you learned about earlier, but weaponized as a form of public sport. The goal was to be cleverer, funnier, and more cutting than your opponent, to win the approval of the crowd. The sagas are full of these verbal showdowns, where heroes dismantle their rivals with sharp, poetic wit. How common this was in reality is uncertain. Was it a genuine pastime, or a literary device used by saga authors to showcase a character's intelligence? The line between history and storytelling, as always, is blurry. But not all entertainment was competitive. Music was a part of life, though it was likely sparse and simple. Archaeologists have found remnants of primitive flutes made from cow bone, and the sagas mention harps and lyres, though these were likely reserved for the halls of wealthy jurelles. The most common instrument was the human voice, singing the epic poems and stories you've been hearing all winter. The children, cooped up for months, have their own ways of staving off boredom. They play with small, carved wooden animals, little toy boats, and dolls made of cotton and wool. Their games mimic the adult role they play at farming, at fighting, at running a household. It is play, but it is also training. You are invited to join a game of HNEFATAFL. You are, of course, terrible at it. Your modern mind, used to symmetrical games like chess, struggles with the concept of unequal forces and different objectives. Your king is trapped and captured within a few moves, to the great amusement of your opponent. You play again, and you lose again. It's frustrating, but it's also a welcome distraction. For a few minutes, the oppressive reality of the smoky, stinking longhouse fades away, replaced by the small, ordered world of the game board. You realize that these games are not just frivolous pastimes. They are essential survival tools. They keep the mind sharp, the body active, and the social bonds from fraying under the immense pressure of the winter confinement. They are a way to channel the Vikings' natural aggression and competitiveness into non-lethal channels. In a world with so little, a victory in a game, a successful lift of a heavy stone, or a cleverly worded insult is a small treasure, a momentary flicker of light in the long, dark night. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the great siege of winter begins to break. The snow starts to melt, revealing the muddy, sodden earth beneath. The days lengthen, and the sun, though still weak, carries a promise of warmth. The sound of dripping water from the eaves of the longhouse is the sweetest music you've ever heard. The village slowly, stiffly, comes back to life. People emerge from their smoky prisons, blinking in the new light, their faces pale and gaunt from the long confinement. But this is not a time of rest. The arrival of spring kicks off a new, frantic season of work. The fields must be plowed and planted, the fences mended from winter damage, and the fishing boats made seaworthy again. And amidst all this renewed agricultural labor, a different kind of energy begins to build. It's an excitement, a restlessness, a palpable sense of anticipation. It's the feeling that the world is about to open up again. The time for raiding and trading is near. You watch as the focus of the men's work shifts to the great long ship that has been sheltered on the shore all winter. It's the jarless ship, a magnificent vessel, long and sleek, with a fearsome dragon head carved into its prow. This ship is the pride of the community and the engine of its wealth. It is their key to the wider world. The preparations are meticulous. The hull is scraped clean of barnacles under it, awed with a foul-smelling mixture of pint or and animal fat to ensure it's waterproof. The complex rigging of ropes and stays is inspected and repaired. The massive single sail, the one you clumsily helped to patch, is brought out, unfolded, and hoisted to check for any new tears or weak spots. The men who will form the crew are chosen by the Jarl. They are the youngest, strongest, and most ambitious men in the village. To be chosen for the crew of a longship is a great honor. It's a chance to gain wealth, reputation, and experience. It's a rite of passage for a young man, a way to prove his courage and worth. You see the eager faces of the chosen, including the carl's eldest son, who handles his spear with a new confident swagger. He is no longer a boy practicing in the snow, he is about to become a Viking. The atmosphere is a strange and heady mix of celebration and dread. The women are busy preparing provisions for the voyage, barrels of fresh water, sacks of hard, dry bread, and piles of salted fish and meat. They do so with a mixture of pride and anxiety. They are proud of their sons, husbands, and brothers for embarking on this daring venture, but they are also acutely aware of the dangers. Many who leave on these voyages do not return. They are lost to storms, to disease, or to the swords of those they intend to wrong. A fascinating point of contention among historians is the primary motivation for the Viking raids. The traditional view is that it was simple greed and bloodlust. But modern scholarship suggests a more complex picture. Was it a response to overpopulation and a shortage of good farmland in Scandinavia? Was it driven by political instability, with defeated chieftains taking to the sea to build a new power base? Was it a reaction to the expanding influence of Charlemagne's empire to the south? Or was it simply that they developed a superior maritime technology, the longship, that gave them an unprecedented ability to project power? They used it to their full advantage. The answer is likely all of the above. The Viking expansion was multifaceted phenomenon with deep and complex roots. A quirky detail about the longships is their incredibly shallow draft. These ships could float in just a few feet of water. This was a revolutionary technological advantage. It meant they weren't confined to deep harbors. They could sail up rivers, deep into the heart of a country, and land on any flat beach. An English or French town that felt perfectly safe, miles from the coast, could suddenly find a fleet of Dragon Pro wedge ships on their riverbank with no warning. It was this ability to strike anywhere a bank with no warning, seemingly out of nowhere, that made them so terrifying. The day of departure arrives. There's a feast the night before, full of boasts, toasts, and promises of the riches to be brought back. In the morning, the whole village gathers at the shore to see the crew off. The ship is loaded, the great sail is unfurled, and with a final cheer, the men push off from the beach and catch the wind. You watch the longship glide out of the fjord, its colorful, striped sail growing smaller and smaller against the vast grey water until it's just a speck on the horizon. The village feels suddenly quiet, then smaller. The strongest hands, the loudest voices are gone. A new season of waiting and worrying has just begun. The longship disappears over the horizon, and a profound silence settles over the village. The boisterous energy of the last few weeks is gone, replaced by a quiet, anxious hum. The physical landscape feels emptier. The workforce has been cut in half. The remaining population consists of women, children, the elderly, and a few men who were too old, too young, or not skilled enough to make the raiding crew. Your host, the carl, was one of them. He is a farmer, not a sailor, and his value lies here, tending the lamb. Life must go on, of course. The spring planting cannot wait. The nets still need to be cast in the fjord for the daily catch. The cows still need to be milked. The tasks that once took for strong men now take 8 boys and old men. You find yourself pushed into more demanding physical labor. Your muscles, now hardened by months of work, aching with a familiar fatigue. But the most significant change is not the physical strain, it's the psychological one. The village feels vulnerable, exposed. The fiercest dogs of the pack are gone, and the remaining flock is keenly aware of its defenselessness. Every strange sound from the forest, every shadow on the water, elicits a nervous glance. The departure of the warriors didn't make the village safer, it turned it into a target. This was the other side of the raiding coin. While their men were off plundering distant shores, Viking homelands were not immune to attack. A rival Jarl from a neighboring fjord, seeing an opportunity, could easily launch his own raid on a poorly defended village. The cycle of violence was not just something they exported, it was an ever-present reality at home. The very act of seeking wealth abroad created a power vacuum that invited aggression. The women now carry a double burden. They are responsible for all their traditional work, running the household, weaving, preparing food, and they must also supervise the farming and the defense of the village. The carl's wife, the woman who seemed so focused on the domestic sphere, now walks the perimeter of the village evening, a small hand axe tucked into her belt. Her face is a mask of weary resolve. The sagas of formidable women like her, who could manage a farm, wield authority, and defend their homes with fierce determination. These shield maidens, female warriors who fought alongside men, are a popular element of Viking lore. The historicity of shield maidens is one of the most hotly debated topics in Viking studies. For a long time, scholars dismissed them as purely literary creations, a fantastical element in the sagas. The roles in Viking society were thought to be strictly gendered. However, in recent years, archaeological discoveries have challenged this assumption. A famous, lavishly equipped warrior grave in Berka, Sweden, long assumed to be that of a high-ranking male commander, was revealed through DNA analysis to contain the skeleton of a woman. This discovery sent shockwaves through the academic world. Was she a one-of-a-kind anomaly, or does she represent a reality that the male-centric historical records have largely ignored? The debate is far from over, but the evidence for female warriors is stronger now than ever before. As the days turn into weeks, a routine of anxious waiting sets in. Every evening, people climb the small hill overlooking the fjord, straining their eyes at the empty horizon, hoping to see the familiar striped sail of their long ship returning. But the sea remains stubbornly, unnerving empty. The conversation in the longhouse inevitably turns to the fate of the voyagers. Are they feasting in a captured English town? Are they trading for silks in the markets of the East? Or are their bodies food for the crabs at the bottom of the North Sea? No one knows, and this not knowing is a special kind of torture. A quirky detail of their spiritual life is the practice of sea reform of Norse magic and shamanism, primarily associated with women. A practitioner, or VOLVA, could supposedly enter a trance, communicate with spirits, and see into the future. It was a powerful, but also dangerous art, considered somewhat unmanly for men to practice, though even the god Odin was a master of it. In a time of such uncertainty, you can imagine the temptation to consult a VOLVA to pay her for a prophecy about the fate of the ship. But her visions were oft uncryptic and ambiguous, offering little real comfort. You stand on the hill with the others at twilight, the wind whipping your hair, your eyes fixed on the grey expanse of water. You feel the collective anxiety of the village, a silent, communal prayer sent out into the vast emptiness. You are not worried about a specific son or husband, but you have become part of this community, and their fear is now your fear. You finally understand that the great, glorious adventure of the Viking Age, the thrilling tales of raiding and exploration, were paid for by the quiet, agonizing dread of those who were left behind. Weeks have bled into a month, and the anxious waiting has become a dull, constant ache in the heart of the village. The initial hope has begun to curdle into a more pessimistic resignation. Perhaps the ship was lost in a storm. Perhaps they met a stronger foe. The villagers try to go about their days, but the spectre of loss hangs over everything. Then, one afternoon, the cry goes up. A boy, perched on the lookout hill, is shouting and pointing frantically towards the sea. Everyone drops what they're doing and runs to the shoreline, their hearts pounding with a mixture of hope and terror. You run with them, your breath catching in your chest, but the hope dies the moment you see it. It's a ship, yes, but it's not theirs. The sail is the wrong color, a dirty patch brown. The prow is carved not into the familiar shape of their dragon, but into a snarling wolf's head. And there isn't just one. Another follows it out from behind the headland, and then a third. 3 longships, full of armed men, are gliding silently and swiftly into their fjord. The reality crashes down on the village like a physical blow. They are being raided. This is what they had feared every single day. The vulnerability you felt was not paranoia, it was a premonition. Panic erupts. There is no time to organize a defense, no time to execute a plan. The village, stripped of its best warriors, is hopelessly outmatched. The carl's wife screams orders, her voice sharp with desperation. To the woods, hide the children. People scatter in every direction, a chaotic explosion of terror. Mothers grab their crying children and run towards the dark treeline behind the village. The old men, armed with wood axes and pitchforks, form a pathetic, trembling line in front of the longhouses, a futile gesture of defiance. You are caught in the middle of it, your mind a blank slate of pure, unadulterated fear. Your modern brain, which has only ever known a world with laws and emergency services, simply cannot process this. There is no one to call. There is no authority to appeal to. There is only the raw, terrifying reality of imminent violence. The first longship beaches on the shore, its hull grating on the gravel. Men leap out before it even comes to a stop, splashing through the shallow water. They are a nightmare brought to life. Large bearded figures armed with round shields, spears, and heavy axes. They wear leather jerkins and some have simple iron helmets. They move with a brutal, practiced efficiency, their shouts and war cries echoing through the quiet fjord. They don't hesitate. They swarm up the beach and crash into the flimsy line of old men. The fight, if you can call it that, is over in seconds. It's a massacre. The defenders are cut down without ceremony, their makeshift weapons no match for the raiders' steel. You see your host, the carl who had argued so passionately about a sheep, fall with a spear in his chest, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. This is the brutal truth of a raid. It's not a glorious battle between equals. It's an act of predatory violence, of the strong preying on the weak. It's about profit, plain and simple. Historians and archaeologists have pieced together the anatomy of these attacks. The raiders' goal was to fold portable wealth and people. They would target places they knew to be rich, and poorly defended monasteries were a favorite target in Britain and Ireland for their gold and silver, but a rival's undefended village was just as good. A grim and peculiar detail is what archaeologists call defensive hoards. All across the Viking world, they have found collections of silver, jewelry, and coins buried in the ground, often in remote locations. The common interpretation is that these were emergency deposits, buried by people in the path of a raid like this one, with the full intention of coming back to retrieve them later. The fact that so many of these hoards exist for archaeologists to find is a testament to how many people never got the chance to return. The raiders sweep through the village like a fire. They are not interested in a protracted fight. They are here for loot. They kick in the doors of the longhouses, grabbing anything of value, the few silver brooches the women own, iron tools, weapons, and woven textiles, which were a valuable trade commodity. What they cannot carry they destroy. They overturn the grain bins, kick over the cauldron of stew simmering on the fire. And with a horrifying casualness, they thrust their torches into the dry thatch of the longhouse roofs. Within minutes, the home that had sheltered you all winter is engulfed in flames. Black smoke billows into the sky, a funeral pyre for the entire community. The air is filled with the sounds of splintering wood, the screams of the dying, and the triumphant shouts of the attackers. You are paralyzed, hidden behind a stack of firewood, watching the complete and utter destruction of your world. The horror is absolute. The life you have come to know, the people you have lived with, the very structures that defined your existence, all of it is being erased in a storm of fire and steel. The world has descended into a chaos of smoke, screams, and the terrifying clang of metal on metal. You are huddled behind the woodpile, your body trembling uncontrollably, your mind struggling to keep up with the sensory overload. The smell of burning thatch and pine fills your lungs, acrid and suffocating. The heat from the blazing longhouse is intense, even from a distance. Everything you've known for the past year is being unmade before your eyes. Your survival instinct, a primal force you never knew you possessed, finally kicks in. The paralysis breaks. The thought is simple and clear: run, staying here means death or capture. The woods. But Carl's wife had screamed it before she was lost in the chaos. The dark, dense forest at the edge of the village is your only hope. You keep low to the ground, scuttling from the woodpile to the cover of a small stone wall that encloses the now rampled vegetable garden. Your heart is a frantic drum against your ribs. You peek over the wall. The raiders are everywhere. They move with a terrifying purpose, some hauling loot back towards their ships, others fanning out to catch those who have fled. You see a woman dragged from her hiding place, her screams cut short as she is bound and thrown to the ground. No older than 10 try to run, only to be caught by the back of his tunic and subdued with a cruel laugh. They are not just taking things, they are taking people. You have to move. Now, taking a deep breath that does nothing to calm you, you burst from behind the wall and sprint across the open ground that separates you from the tree line. It's the longest 50 yards of your life. The ground is uneven, and you stumble, your feet catching on unseen roots and rocks. You don't dare look back. You can hear shouts behind you, but you can't tell if they're directed at you or at someone else. The forest seems impossibly far away. Each step is an agony of suspense. You are completely exposed, a perfect target. You plunge into the tree line, the cool, damp shadows of the pines swallowing you up. You don't stop. You push deeper, branches whipping at your face, thorns tearing at your woolen tunic. You run blindly, fueled by pure adrenaline, scrambling up a steep, mossy embankment. You only stop when your lungs are burning and your legs give out, collapsing in a heap behind a large, fallen log. You lie there, gasping for air, your ears ringing. The sounds of the raid are muffled now, but still audible: the crackle of the fire, the distant shouts. You are hidden, but you are not safe. You are alone in a wilderness you do not know. You have no food, no water, no weapon. You have only the clothes on your back and the terror in your heart. This situation, being lost in the Scandinavian wilderness, was a very real danger. While the Vikings were masters of the sea, the land itself could be just as deadly. The forests were vast and dangerous, home to bears and wolves. A person could easily get lost and die of exposure or starvation, even a short distance from their own home. A strange and debated piece of folklore relates to the varg, a term for a wolf, but also for a dangerous outlaw. Some tales suggest that certain outlaws would go wolf, living a feral existence in the woods, becoming as dangerous as the beasts they lived among. Whether this reflects a real social phenomenon of feral outcasts, or is just a spooky story to tell around the fire, is unknown. You slowly, cautiously raise your head and look back the way you came. Through the trees, you can see the smoke. A thick, black column rising into the placid grey sky. It's a funeral monument, a grave marker for the entire village. You think of the people you knew. The carle, his wife, the old men who stood their ground, the fisherman who died of infection, the blacksmith who pulled your tooth. All gone, wiped out in less than an hour. What do you do now? Do you stay hidden in the woods and risk starvation? Do you try to find another village, hoping they will take you in and not see you as a threat or a burden? Or do you wait for the raiders to leave and go back to the smoking ruins to see if anyone else survived? The choice is impossible. Each option is fraught with peril. You are a survivor, but you have survived into a world with no structure, no safety net. The thin veneer of civilization you had just begun to understand has been stripped away, revealing the brutal truth underneath. Life is fragile. Community is fragile. Safety is an illusion. You are utterly, terrifyingly alone. Hiding in the dirt, you listen to the sounds of your world ending and wonder if you have the strength to begin a new one. Hours pass. The shouts and the sounds of destruction from the village slowly fade, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the crackle of the dying fires. The sun begins to dip towards the horizon, casting long, menacing shadows through the forest. The adrenaline that fueled your flight has worn off, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion and a hollow, gnawing fear. The cold of the forest floor is seeping into your body. You make a decision, born not of courage but of a desperate need for answers. You have to go back. You have to see what's left. Maybe there's food or a serviceable blanket in the ruins. Creeping back through the woods is even more terrifying than running through them. Every snapping twig, every rustle of leaves, sounds like an approaching raider. Your heart leaps into your throat a dozen times. When you finally reach the edge of the tree line and look out, the sight steals the breath from your lungs. The village is gone. In its place is a smoldering, blackened wasteland. The proud longhouses are now just charred skeletons of timber. Their turf roofs collapsed into the infernos that consumed them. A foul-smelling smoke hangs heavy in the air, mixing with the metallic scent of blood. The ground is littered with the bodies of the fallen, the old men, the carle, and others who were not fast enough. You step out into the ruin, your feet crunching on ashen charcoal. It's a landscape from a nightmare. You move through the desolation, a ghost in a graveyard of your own recent past. You see the lifting stone, the one the young men used to prove their strength. It now sits next to the charred remains of a home. You see the remnants of the fence you helped to mend, now just a line of blackened sticks. Then you see them. A small group of raiders is still there down by the beach, loading the last of their plunder onto their ships. And with them are the survivors. Or rather, the captives. About a dozen people, mostly women and strong-looking teenagers, are huddled together, their hands bound in front of them. You recognize the Carl's daughter, her face streaked with soot and tears. They are the raid's most valuable prize, human cargo. Your blood runs cold. You duck behind the remains of a stone wall, your heart pounding. One of the raiders, a large man with a braided blonde beard, is doing a final sweep of the area. He walks through the ruins, his axe resting on his shoulder, his eyes scanning for any movement, any sign of life they might have missed. He is walking directly towards your hiding place. You press yourself flat against the ground, trying to will yourself invisible. Don't breathe. Don't move a muscle. He draws closer. You can hear the crunch of his leather boots on the ash. You can see the intricate carvings on the handle of his axe. This is it. HES going to find you. He stops not 10 feet from where you're hiding. He turns his head, and for a heart-stopping moment, you think his eyes meet yours. But he's looking past you towards the setting sun. He seems satisfied. He turns and begins to walk back towards the ships. You let out a breath you didn't realize you'd been holding, a shaky, silent gasp of relief. But your relief is short-lived. As you shift your weight, your foot dislodges a loose stone. It makes a small, insignificant clatter. But in the dead silence of the ruined village, it sounds as loud as a thunderclap. The rider freezes. He turns his head slowly, his eyes narrowing, honing in on the exact spot the sound came from. He begins to walk towards you again, but this time with a grim purpose. His hand tightens on his axe. The game is up. He rounds the wall and sees you. There's a moment of stillness as you stare at each other. His face shows no surprise, just a flicker of cruel satisfaction. He raises his axe. You scramble backwards, crab walking through the dirt and ash, your mind blank with terror. But there is nowhere to go. He doesn't kill you. With a swift, practiced movement, he kicks your legs out from under you and presses the flat of his axe blade against your throat. Another raider joins him, and in a matter of seconds, your arms are yanked behind your back and your wrists are bound tightly with a strip of leather. The rough cord cuts into your skin. The freedom you so narrowly won in your desperate flight has just been extinguished. The rider hauls you to your feet and shoves you towards the beach. You stumble over the uneven ground, your hands tied, your dignity stripped away. You are forced into the huddle of other captives. You see the faces of your neighbors, now blank with shock and despair. You are a RLA slave. Your old life, your identity as a Carl is gone. You are no longer a person. You are property, a piece of walking, breathing loot, no different from the silver brooches and iron tools, now piled in the bottom of the long ship. The hands that bound you have not just taken your freedom, they have taken your future. You are shoved towards the Wolf Pro-Wed long ship, your bound hands making you clumsy and off balance. The coarse sand of the beach gives way to the freezing water of the fjord as you're forced to wade out to the waiting vessel. A rough hand grabs the back of your tunic and hauls you over the gunwale, and you fall in a heap onto the hard wooden deck. The world is a bewildering kaleidoscope of smells, the sharp tang of salt, the scent of pine tar, and the sour, close smell of unwashed men. You are herded into the open space in the middle of the ship, between the mast and the stern. Here, the other captors are already huddled together, a miserable collection of human misery. You are packed in tightly, forced to sit on the rough planks, your knees drawn up to your chest. There is no shelter from the wind, which is already picking up as evening sets in. The riders move around you with an air of complete indifference. You are no longer worthy of their attention. You are cargo. They are busy making the ship ready to sail, their movements efficient and practiced. They hoist the large brown sail, and it catches the wind with a loud THWUMP. The ship lurches into motion, gliding away from the shore, away from the smoking funeral pyre of the village that was your home. You watched the familiar landscape recede, the fjord widening into the open sea, until the shore is just a dark line in the distance, and then nothing at all. Your new identity is communicated without a single word. You are now RLLLL, the term itself, which you learned when you first arrived, now has a crushing personal weight. In the sagas and law codes, the life of a thrall is laid out in pronosanding. You cannot testify at the thing. You cannot marry a free person. Your children will be born into slavery. Any harm done to you is considered a property crime against your owner, not a personal crime against you. Your owner has the right to beat you, to work you to death, and in most cases to kill you without consequence. This new reality sinks in as you watch the crew settle down for the night. They produce flasks of ale and chunks of dried meat from their packs, laughing and talking as they eat. They do not offer any food or water to the captives. You are a commodity, and commodities do not need to be comfortable. The hunger in your belly is a sharp, painful knot, a physical manifestation of your new, powerless status. A grim but historically debated aspect of thralldom is the so-called slave collar. Some archaeological finds have included heavy iron collars with locks, which are often interpreted as being used on thralls to prevent escape. However, these finds are relatively rare, and some scholars argue they may have been used for restraining valuable animals or were perhaps even symbolic. Was being collared a common, degrading reality for a newly captured thrall, or was it an extreme measure, reserved for the most rebellious or dangerous captives lying here, with the leather cutting into your wrists? You suspect that if they had a collar, they would use it. As darkness falls, the temperature on the open water plummets. The wind cuts through your woolen tunic, chilling you to the bone. You huddle together with the other captives, sharing what little body heat you have. There are no blankets for you. The rhythmic creaking of the ship's timbers and the whistle of the wind in the rigging are the only sounds, a mournful soundtrack to your despair. You look at the faces around you in the dim moonlight. The Carl's daughter is weeping silently, her body shaking with grief and terror. A young boy who just a day ago was playing with a wooden boat stares out at the dark water with wide, unseeing eyes. You are all caught in the same net, stripped of your names, your families, your futures. You are no longer farmers, weavers, or sons and daughters. You are a collective of the dispossessed. You lie back against the hard planks, the motion of the ship a constant, unsettling sway. You are leaving the only world you have known, heading towards an unknown destination and an unknown master. Your past has been burned to the ground, and your future is a terrifying, formless void. The freedom you once took for granted, the simple dignity of being a person, now seems like an impossibly distant dream. This, you realize, is the true meaning of being a slave. It is not just the loss of liberty, but the theft of your own humanity. The journey is a blur of misery. Days and nights blend into one another, marked only by the changing light in the sky. Your world has shrunk to the cramped, open space in the middle of the long ship. The sea, which once seemed a thing of beauty and opportunity from the shore, is now a monstrous, indifferent entity. The ship rises and falls on the grey, rolling waves, a relentless motion that sickens you to your core. The conditions are subhuman. You remain bound, though your captors occasionally loosen the leather strips to prevent your hands from becoming completely useless. You are given a meager ration once a day, a chunk of hard, stale bread, so dry it scratches your throat, and a mouthful of brackish water from a communal bucket. It's just enough to keep you alive. Hunger is a constant, dull ache in your stomach. Thirst is a fire in your throat. There is no sanitation. You are forced to relieve yourself over the side of the ship, a deeply humiliating act performed in full view of the crew and your fellow captives. The stench of fear, sickness, and human waste hangs heavy in your small section of the vessel. The cold is your constant companion. The sea spray soaks your woolen tunic, and the wind never ceases. The wool, which was once a comfort for its water-resistant qualities, is now a heavy, sodden cage that traps the cold against your skin. Sickness begins to spread among the captives. The young boy with the blank eyes develops a fever, his body racked with shivers. He becomes delirious, crying out for his mother, who was killed in the raid. No one offers him any comfort or aid. He is a piece of damaged goods, his value decreasing with every labored breath. A few days into the voyage, he dies quietly in the pre-dawn chill. Two of the raiders, with no ceremony at all, pick up his small, limp body and toss it over the side. It disappears into the churning waves without a splash. There is no mourning, no moment of silence. There is only a terrifying, practical clearing of space. You learn to make yourself small to become invisible. You learn to read the moods of your captors. You can tell by the way they walk, by the tone of their voices, when it is best to stare at the deck and not move a muscle. Any sign of defiance, a challenging look, a muttered complaint is met with a swift, brutal kick or a blow from the back of a hand. You learn that survival here is not about strength or courage, it's about absolute submission. One of the great historical questions about the Viking slave trade is its sheer scale and organization. This wasn't just opportunistic kidnapping, it was a sophisticated international business. The Norse, known as the Rus in the East, sailed their long ships down the great rivers of Russia, establishing a trade route that stretched all the way to Constantinople and the markets of the Arab world. Their primary export commodity was not furs or amber, but people. Was the crew of this ship part of a larger network? Are you destined for a farm in Iceland, a quarry in Norway, or a slave market in the bustling, cosmopolitan city of Kyiv? You have no way of knowing. You are simply freight, being moved from one point to another on a vast, brutal supply chain. A strange and specific detail that emerges from historical texts, like the account of the Arab diplomat Ibn Fadlan, is the different treatment of male and female slaves. While men were valued primarily for their labor, women were valued for both labor and as concubines. Fadlan describes the Rus merchants openly mating with their female thralls in the public market. This adds another layer of visual fear, especially for the women captives huddled beside you. Their bodies are not their own in any sense of the word. As the days wear on, a strange, deadening apathy descends upon you. The initial shock and terror have been ground down by the relentless misery of the voyage into a dull, protective numbness. Your mind shuts down. You stop thinking about your past, it's too painful. You stop thinking about your future, it's too terrifying. You exist only in the present moment, the gnawing hunger, the biting cold, the swaying of the deck, the rough texture of the planks beneath you. Hope is a dangerous luxury, and you have learned to live without it. You are no longer the person who shoveled manure, who argued about sheep, who survived a tooth extraction. That person died in the fire of the village. You are something else now, something else now, something else now, something harder and emptier. You watch the grey waves, the grey sky, and the grey, indifferent faces of your captors, and you feel nothing. This, you realize, is the final stage of your enslavement, the death of your spirit. After a journey that feels like a lifetime, the scenery begins to change. You see land again, not the familiar, rugged coastline of your home, but a flatter, greener shore dotted with small settlements. The ship navigates its way up a wide, slow-moving river, and soon you see it a town, larger than any you have ever witnessed. This isn't a simple village of a half-dozen longhouses. It's a bustling, sprawling port, a chaotic jumble of timber buildings, docks, and defensive palisades, a place like Dubai or Burka, a crossroads of the Viking world. The ship docks at a long, crowded wharf. The sounds and smells are overwhelming, a magnified version of the village you first encountered. You hear a dozen different languages being spoken, a cacophony of Norse, Slavic, Germanic, and perhaps even Arabic tongues. The air is thick with the smoke from hundreds of fires, the smell of cooking food, of traded goods like leather and beeswax, and the ever-present stench of 1,000 people living in close quarters. Your captors, the raiders, transform before your eyes. They are no longer just warriors, they are businessmen. They tidy their appearance, combing their beards and putting on slightly cleaner tunics. They are here to sell their wares, and you are the main product. You and the other captives are roughly hauled off the ship and onto the docks. Your legs, weak from the long, cramped voyage, tremble on solid ground. You are prodded and pushed through the crowded streets, a miserable procession of human cattle. People stop and stare. They are not looking at you with pity, but with the calculating eyes of potential buyers. They assess your health, your strength, your age. Eamon pinches the arm of one of the captive women, feeling the muscle. Another forces open a young man's mouth to inspect his teeth. The very same procedure you endured for your extraction, but this time for a different, more chilling purpose. You are led to an open, muddy square, the slave market. Here, other groups of captives are already on display, their faces etched with the same numb despair as your own. There are people from all over the known world, pale-skinned Irish and English, dark-haired Slavs from the east, and even a few people with the darker complexions of the distant south. It's a horrifying tableau of human commerce. Your owner, the captain of the raiding ship, begins the negotiations. He haggles with merchants, landowners, and the agents of wealthy JLS. The language is all about practicality. This one is young, will last many years. This woman is skilled at weaving. You are discussed, analyzed, and priced as if you were a horse or an ox. Your humanity is completely irrelevant. All that matters your utility. One of the ongoing debates among economists and historians is the actual price of a thrall. It's a difficult thing to calculate, as it varied wildly based on age, gender, skill, and location. Some legal texts and sagas provide price guidelines. For example, a healthy young male thrall might be valued at a certain weight of silver, roughly equivalent to the price of a few cows. But was this a fixed, legal price, or just a suggestion? Did prices fluctuate with supply and demand? Like any other commodity, after a successful raiding season, with the market flooded with new captives, did the price of a human life plummet? It's a gruesome economic calculation to consider. You are made to stand on a small raised wooden platform alone. The buyers circle you, their eyes appraising every inch of you. They look at your hands to see if they are calloused and suited for labor. They look at your back and legs for signs of strength. You stare at a point in the distance, your mind a complete blank, detaching yourself from the utter humiliation of the moment. You are no longer a being, you are an object on auction. A deal is struck. Your former owner, the raider captain, shakes hands with a new man, a stout, wealthy-looking farmer with cold, shrewd eyes. Silver coins are exchanged. The transaction is complete. You have been sold. Your new master takes the rope that has been tied around your neck, a symbol of your new ownership, and gives it a sharp tug. Kom, he grunts, the simple command to come. He turns and walks away, pulling you along behind him like a dog on a leash. You stumble after him, not daring to look back at the other captives, at the people you shared that horrific journey with. You are alone again, a piece of property that has just changed hands. You walk through the noisy, indifferent streets of this strange new town, towards a new life that you did not choose and cannot control. Your journey into the heart of slavery has just begun. Your new master leads you away from the bustling market, through the winding, muddy streets of the town, and out into the countryside. The walk is long and silent. He doesn't speak to you, and you wouldn't dare to speak to him. You are simply a shadow trailing behind him, connected by the rope. After several hours, you arrive at his farmstead. It's much larger and more prosperous than the village you came from. The longhouse is bigger. The fences are in better repair, and there are vast fields stretching out in every direction, along with a large herd of cattle. This is a place of wealth and power, built on the backs of people like you. You are immediately put to work. There is no orientation, no period of adjustment. You are handed a shovel and pointed towards a ditch that needs to be dug for drainage. The work is grueling, harder than any you have done before. From sunrise to sunset, 7 days a week you labor. You dig ditches, you haul stones, you clear fields, you shovel manure from the massive livestock pens. Your life becomes a monotonous, exhausting cycle of physical toil. Your existence is stripped down to its barest essentials. You are given a place to sleep, not in the main longhouse with the family, but in a small, windowless outbuilding with the other thralls. It's a dirt-floored hovel, crowded and cold, little better than the animal pens. Your food is the bare minimum required to keep you strong enough to work a daily ration of thin, watery porridge and whatever scraps are left over from the master's table. The same itchy woolen tunic you arrived in, now tattered and filthy. You learn that there is a hierarchy even among the thralls. There are those who have been with the family for years, who have earned a small measure of trust and are given slightly better jobs, like working in the kitchens or tending to the horses. As the newest arrival, you are at the very bottom, assigned the most back-breaking and undesirable tasks. You are an outsider among outsiders. The master and his family treat you not with active cruelty, but with a soul-crushing indifference. You are a tool, a piece of farm equipment. They do not use your name, they simply refer to you as thrall. Your feelings, your thoughts, your past, none of it matters. Your only value is in the work your body can produce. A broken shovel is an annoyance. A lame thrall is an annoyance. Can a thrall ever gain their freedom? This is a complex question that historians continue to explore. The answer is yes, but it was incredibly rare. The sagas mention a few ways it could happen. A master might free a thrall on his deathbed as an act of piety. A thrall might be freed for an act of exceptional service, such as saving a family member's life. The most common, though still difficult, path to freedom was for a thrall to save up enough personal wealth to buy themselves from their master. Some thralls were allowed to have small private gardens or to sell crafts they made in their free time, slowly accumulating a pittance over many years. This practice, known as pecunium in Roman law, was a powerful incentive for thralls to work hard and remain obedient. But it was a long, arduous process, and most would die in servitude long before they saved enough. A quirky and sad detail from this system is the freedom porridge. Some sources mention a ritual where, upon being freed, the former thrall would host a feast for their former master, serving a special freedom porridge as a symbol of their new status and their gratitude. It's a poignant image, having to spend your first moments of freedom and your meager savings by throwing a party for the person who owned you. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months. The seasons change. You watch the planting, the growing, and the harvesting from the perspective of a beast of burden. You feel no connection to the land, no pride in the work. It is not your home. It is not your harvest. You are simply the muscle that makes it happen. Your spirit, which you thought had died on the ship, has retreated to a small, hard kernel deep inside you. You learn to operate on a kind of autopilot. You wake up, you work, you eat your meager ration, you collapse into sleep. You do not allow yourself to think, to remember, to hope. Thinking leads to despair. Remembering leads to pain. Hope is a poison that you cannot afford to drink. You see no way out. The idea of escape is a fantasy. Where would you go? You don't know this land. You don't speak the dialect well, and your ragged appearance screams escaped thrall. You would be hunted down and returned for a brutal punishment, or killed by the first person who found you. Your life has no future. There is no promotion to strive for, no goal to achieve. There is only tomorrow, which will be exactly the same as today, an endless expanse of hard labor, punctuated by hunger and exhaustion. This is the grim reality of your new life. You are no longer living, you are simply enduring. And the worst part is, you are beginning to get used to it. Years go by. How many you've lost count? 5, 7. The passage of time is marked only by the endless cycle of seasons of cowing and planting and harvesting. The sharp edges of your past have been worn smooth by the relentless grind of your daily existence. The memories of your old life, the smell of your home village, the face of your host, the call, the terror of the raid have faded. They are like scenes from someone else's story, a distant, half-forgotten dream. You are no longer the newcomer. Other thralls have been bought and sold, some dying from overwork or disease, others sold off to different farms. You are now one of the senior thralls, a familiar piece of the farmstead's machinery. Your body is a testament to your life of labor. Your back is permanently stooped. Your hands are a mass of calluses and scar tissue. And your face is a weathered mask, etched with lines of exhaustion. You have found a strange, bleak rhythm in your life. You have learned to anticipate the needs of the farm and the moods of your master. You know which tools work best for which tasks. You know how to pace yourself to survive the grueling 16-hour workdays of summer. You have become an expert in the science of endurance. This expertise has earned you a sliver of status within the thrall community. You are no longer given the absolute worst jobs. You are sometimes entrusted with tasks that require a modicum of skill, like mending a harness or sharpening a plow blade. These small responsibilities are the only form of promotion you will ever know. You have learned to find meaning in the smallest of things. A brief moment of rest in the shade of a tree, an extra piece of bread in your evening ration, the warmth of the sun on your back on a cool spring morning. These are not joys, they are simply momentary cessations of misery, tiny islands of neutrality in an ocean of hardship. They are what keep you going. The question of whether a thrall could ever truly assimilate or feel a sense of belonging on the farmstead where they were enslaved is a complex one, deeply debated by social historians. The sagas sometimes depict loyal thralls who are devoted to their masters' families, even fighting to defend them. Was this a genuine possibility, that over decades a thrall could develop a kind of Stockholm syndrome like attaches, or is it a literary device? A convenient fiction created by the land-owning class who wrote and consumed these stories to justify the institution of slavery and portray themselves as benevolent patriarchs looking at the cold, impassive face of your master. You find it hard to believe that any real affection could ever bridge the chasm between your two worlds. A peculiar and haunting archaeological find that speaks to this is the thrall stone. In some parts of Scandinavia, memorial runestone nests have been found that were raised not for a great jarl or warrior, but in memory of a faithful thrall. One famous stone reads something like Toki the smith raised this stone in memory of his thrall. He was a good boy. It's a baffling artifact. Was it a sign of genuine affection and respect for a beloved servant, or was it the ultimate act of ownership? A master marking his property even in death? The answer is likely lost to time. One evening, as you are repairing a broken fence at the edge of the property, you see a trading party passing on the road. They are rough-looking men, sailors and merchants, their faces weathered by sun and sea. And for a fleeting moment, one of them looks familiar. The way he walks, the set of his shoulders, could it be, is it one of the boys from your old village? One of the lucky ones, who was on the raiding party when your home was destroyed. He would be a man now, a veteran warrior. Your heart, a muscle you thought had atrophied from disuse, gives a painful lurch. You feel a sudden, dizzying rush of emotion, a surge of anger, and a profound, bottomless wave of grief. The wall of numbness you had so carefully constructed over the years cracks, and for a moment, the full weight of everything you have lost comes crashing down on you. The man glances in your direction. His eyes sweep over you, a ragged thrall mending a fence. There is no recognition in his gaze. To him, you are just part of the scenery. He turns away and continues down the road, laughing with his companions. The moment passes. The trading party disappears from view. You are left standing by the fence, your hands trembling. The brief, phantom connection to your past has only served to highlight the impassable gulf between what you were and what you have become. You are a ghost haunting the edges of a world that you no longer belong to. You turn back to your work. You pick up your hammer. You drive another nail into the wood. The rhythm is familiar, grounding. The numbness slowly returns, a welcome blanket settling over the raw wound that was just torn open. You have a fence to mend. The sun is setting. Soon it will be time for your meager meal and your few hours of dreamless sleep. Tomorrow the work will begin again. This is your life. The person you once were is gone. A whisper on the wind, a forgotten story. All that remains is the silent, enduring thrall. And now the story fades. The sounds of the hammer, the chill of the evening air, the weight of a life unchosen, they all begin to soften, their sharp edges blurring. Let them drift away like smoke from a dying fire, like a ship disappearing over the horizon. The journey you've taken was long and hard, a walk through a world of grey skies and grey choices, but that world is dissolving now, losing its hold on you. Feel the heavy, scratchy wool of thrall's tunic melt away, replaced by the familiar softness of your own blanket. The hard-packed earth of the hubble gives way to the gentle support of your mattress. The gnawing hunger in your belly is gone, replaced by a quiet, peaceful stillness. You are no longer in that time, no longer in that life. You are safe. You are warm. You are here, now, in the quiet sanctuary of your own room. Let the last echoes of that distant past recede. The world of the Vikings, with all its struggle and its strength, can be put away on a shelf for the night. You have witnessed it, you have felt its harshness, and now you can let it go. Your only task now is to rest, to let your mind float on the quiet currents of the approaching sleep. There are no fences to mend, no masters to fear. There is only the gentle rise and fall of your own breathing, a soft and steady rhythm in the deep and peaceful quiet. You are drifting towards a place of deep, untroubled rest. The story is over. It's time for your own dreams to begin. The end of the article. Good night.